Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. I want to jump right into the show this week. We're joined by a very special guest, former Senator Jim Talent. Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
It's great to be here, Scott.
It is an absolute honor to have you, and I wanted to start off with, what have you been working on since leaving the Senate in the last couple of years?
National security, and in particular military preparedness. I'm a fellow at the Bipartisan Policy Center and the American Enterprise Institute. I'm not going to list all the think tanks. I do a lot of advisory commissions, and the message I've been sending, I did this when I was in the Senate too, it was a big issue for me, is that America needs to be strong to be successful around the world and safe, and the first index of strength is the armed forces, and we're allowing them, we're weakening them through this defense sequester and other measures, and it's imperiling the American people. And that, I've been Johnny One Note on that.
There's an interesting correlation there. People talk about, you know, you cut spending to help your local economy and help the country's economy. The fact that American companies are successful all around the world is in part because we have the strongest military. And I think there's a direct correlation to how strong a Monsanto is, how strong an Anheuser-Busch can be as an American company, an American brand, without the military there to spread that goodwill and security.
That's true, and there's an even more direct relationship between the strength of the armed forces and the economy. I mean, people want manufacturing jobs. You want innovation. It's at times when you're being strong in terms of building up the armed forces. It's the defense budget. I mean, there really is a relationship between the creation of the internet and defense spending. So, and particularly in a state like Missouri, I mean, which is a defense state, you want to regrow the manufacturing sector in the heartland? Have a strong defense budget. That is Buy American, and it's high-end, high-tech, good-paying manufacturing jobs. It just doesn't make any sense to continue strangling the Department of Defense from a security or economic standpoint.
I get the sense of folks at Boeing would agree with you on that.
Well, and President Trump does. I mean, one of the reasons I supported him was because he has a very strong defense plan. The problem is that we have these budget caps in place that have artificially yanked down defense spending about $100 billion. We have to get rid of those caps.
Is that the most important thing that can happen at a national level to keep the military prepared?
Yes.
Because that is a commitment the president made to the American people when he was running. We would have the greatest armed forces in the world. Is that the single most important thing they can do?
Yes, and you know, to the extent that people have asked me what my criticisms of the Trump administration would be, I would say I don't think the president has been served well by the people in the administration who have not made getting rid of that a priority. Okay.
Can he do that via executive order? Is that something that has to pass the Congress?
It has to pass because it was a law, the Budget Control Act. And it's time to, you know, stop starving the department. And no, spending money isn't the only thing we need to do.
Sure.
But without that, you cannot. Scott, we have the smallest Air Force since the inception of the service. It's flying the oldest aircraft. We have the smallest Navy in 100 years. We have an Army that's headed down to numbers below World War II level, pre-World War II levels. And all the services need new equipment. There is nothing I can say that makes that okay. Okay, those facts are as bad as you think they are when you hear them. There isn't some hidden thing that makes all that okay.
One of the differences about America is our enemies know that, right?
Yeah.
Where you can maybe hide that in some other forms of government around the world. In our country, our enemies know.
The balance of power, for example, in the Western Pacific has shifted to the Chinese, who've been engaged in a 20-year buildup of their armed forces. That's why they're building the wall of sand in the South China Sea. That's why they're throwing their weight around. It's because they're getting stronger and we've been getting weaker in the first index of national influence. Now, there are other things we need to do. You know, the trade policies the president's pursuing, et cetera. But without a foundation of power, I fear that they won't be successful.
Why would a country sign a trade agreement with us that might be more favorable than the one they have now without American military power?
Yeah, especially since part of the reason we could get them to do that is their sense that America is committed and able to protect its own interests in their region of the world. And again, the signal of that, when they see the number of our ships going down, you know, when they see our guys are flying, our bombers are old enough that if they were human beings, they'd get Social Security, okay? So they're going, well, you know, the Americans are not the future, so we're going to go with the Chinese or we're going to go with the Russians, and we really are seeing that.
Do you believe that part of the reason North Korea is acting as it is because they know these things?
Yeah, well, I would put it this way to you. The best thing we could do in the Northwest Pacific is to rebuild our armed forces and then to have a greater presence, particularly in the East China Sea. Not so much for the North Koreans, but because the Chinese don't want that. And so if you sent the message to the Chinese, well, we're going to have to rebuild our military, and we're spending the money to do it, and we're going to have more ships and planes and bases and more missile defense in the East China Sea. And if you don't like that, maybe you can do something about this guy in North Korea. Now that would send a message they would understand.
Is that a very well phrased diplomatic way to say what the president said? Where he's like, China has failed, sad.
Oh, I think the president's doing this. I agree with his policy very much. Now, as I said, I think the danger is it will fail for want of power, okay? And he knows that. He wants to do this defense plan. But, I agree with the policy. I think you have to put the pressure on the Chinese. At the end of the day, in my opinion, they could control this guy if they really wanted to. They have reasons why they don't. They like North Korea as a buffer state. They're afraid that if the regime collapses, there'll be a lot of refugees in China. So what you have to do is increase the cost to them of supporting this guy so that their incentives change.
Let's talk about another country in that sphere. It's Russia. A lot's been made about Russian collusion, and there's an investigation and now sanctions. I always found it interesting, really what they're alleging the Russians brought to light are things that happened. I mean, there was a concerted effort to cheat Bernie Sanders. I mean, CNN did give questions to hurt Bernie Sanders. I mean, I think, folks in West Butler County who voted for Trump probably didn't vote for Trump because of that. But I also think what came out of that anybody's disputing is true.
You mean the emails that were revealed? Yeah. I mean, they were true. Well, the other thing is, if you say to me that the Russians, or indeed foreign countries, try to interfere in our elections, that is not a man bites dog story in your world, Scott. I mean, they've been trying to do that for a long time. The issue is here, was there active cooperation with the Trump campaign? Now, so far, I've seen no real evidence that there was. This meeting between Trump Jr., that's the first thing anybody, I actually wrote a column about that. I think if I was in their position and somebody who might have been in position to know called me up and said, I have some evidence and some facts that would show your opponent's foundation was tied up with, I think I'd want to know what it was too. But I do think we have to let this investigation play out. Everybody should avoid drawing final conclusions. It's still at too early a stage. Mueller has impaneled a grand jury now. We don't know why. So I think we have to wait to see what happens.
You've ran statewide several times. You know this state as well as anybody that could possibly give an opinion on this. Let's assume the political climate is similar to what it is right now. What does that mean for Republicans next year?
If it's similar to what it is now, and you put a gun to my head, I would say it's going to be a relatively low turnout election with both bases energized. And then we'll find out if Missouri really has become a red state. Because if it has, then I think the Republicans should do pretty well. But I also think it's too early, Scott. I think you can begin to safely draw conclusions about the trend of a year when it is a trend year, when you work into the spring of the on year.
Okay.
Because I think voters start to harden conclusions in the late spring, early summer of the on year. So I honestly think it's too early. I mean, I get asked by people in Washington all the time, and I tell them I think we're going too far out on a limb if you think you know what the basic trend's going to be.
I've noticed though Trump has an interesting lay in Missouri where he overperforms a Republican, especially in places that are swing areas: South County, St. Louis, Jefferson County, the Boot Heel, Eastern Jackson County. I don't know if that builds up a little bit of a buffer for Republicans, because if the president is unpopular, he's still going to be more popular than a normal Republican in some of those swing areas.
Well, there's another thing working. You're right about that. There's another thing working here. It's a curious but interesting principle about politics, is that if there's something about you as a candidate that is negative, and the voters elect you anyway, they've already discounted against that in a sense. So more negativity along those lines doesn't hurt you as much as it would hurt a different politician with that negative. So basically, Trump's sort of just been, they knew this about Trump when they voted for him. He carried the state by 20 points. They knew Trump was quixotic, that he would tweet and do all these things. So as long as the negatives about Trump are in that category, I don't think it hurts him as badly as most people think it does. And I would apply that to all politicians. If it's a negative, if they elect you despite the fact you're kind of incoherent, let's say as a candidate, and then you do something incoherent, they don't punish you as much for that as they would punish somebody who'd always been a really clear
similar
thinker.
to Bill Clinton, wasn't punished for things that people
It's
may have already
absolutely
thought.
the same. They knew from the Jennifer Flowers incident, they knew he was a womanizer. So as long as it fell in that category, but remember the speech when he got mad? He said, President should have, you shouldn't be doing this. That they'd never seen before. And his numbers dropped like a stone. And so then the next day he was back on TV apologizing. And,
Well, Senator, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed the conversation.
That's been fun. Let's do it again.
You bet. We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Representative Tom Hannegan makes his debut after this.
I've been in this industry for over 25 years, with the majority of that time here in St. Louis. At Republic Services, this is the community we serve. That's why we built a clean fleet of 130 compressed natural gas trucks. It is also why we recruit the best people and invest millions of dollars in the St. Louis area to continually upgrade our facilities. We value our community and take great pride in keeping the environment clean. Republic Services, we'll handle it from here.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Nobody likes power outages, including us. That's why Ameren, Missouri is investing in new equipment and smarter technology to reduce outages and keep pace with future needs. And it's working. We're in the top 25% in the nation for reliability. And on average, our rates are 18% lower than other Midwestern states. Making sure the power is there when you need it. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're joined for the first time by Democratic consultant Garrett Webb. Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you.
Welcome back, friend of the show, Senator Jamilah Nasheed.
Thanks
for
for
joining
having
us.
me, Scott.
For the first time, Representative Tom Hannegan. Welcome, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you.
And Steve Tilley, friend of the show, one of the leaders of the taking over the party for that in the House for the Republicans. Welcome back, sir.
Glad to be back.
Start Representative Josh Hawley made his announcement. He's forming his exploratory committee for Senate. He's taken a long time to think about this, I guess, but now that he's made a decision, where does he stand and where are you going to support?
I definitely think he's the right guy for the job. I think that the whole party is kind of behind him. I think that he's been encouraged to run. I think he'll do great things.
So let me ask you this. You recently new to elected office, but you've observed politicians for a long time.
Sure.
Do you think it was really such a hard decision? Or do you think some of this has been a little political theater? Do you think it went on too long?
No, I think he's sincere that, he was like, I'm here for the people. He didn't want to be that career politician. I truly believe that, but I think that, there's a lot of pressure saying you are the right man, and sometimes people need that little extra push, that convincing.
Jamilah, he's been running for Senate since like February, right?
Yeah.
And he made it official this week.
Well, it's really not official. He's still playing around with the exploratory committee. Either you get out of the kitchen, you start a pot, or you get out of the kitchen. There's no in between. Now, I know at the end of the day, he's going to be an easy person to beat when it comes to
I don't agree with that.
Hillary Clinton.
You think? Why?
I'm sorry, not Hillary, Claire McCaskill.
Why do you think that?
Because of her experience and her leadership.
They just elected
in the
a
Senate.
president that had never been elected to anything, and a governor.
Well, you know what? That wasn't a popular vote. We're dealing with popular votes now.
In
We're
Missouri,
not,
it was.
Yeah, well, listen, at the end of the day, Hillary won the whole country by way of popular votes. And I can tell you that we're going to show up and show out this next election because we're tired of the Republicans and all of their shenanigans.
Steve Tilley, I have to say, when Josh Hawley got elected, it was easy to maybe cast him as somebody that might just be looking to do other things and wouldn't take it seriously. I've observed from people that work with him in Jefferson City, the guy has taken the job seriously. He's actually shown independence from the administration, which is probably the most independence of anybody in the executive branch. I think he took that job and has done right by the people. Maybe this indecision took longer than maybe was politically smart.
Actually, I don't think so. I think I've been unbelievably impressed with him. And, you know, I've dealt with, and I know you have as well, dealt with a lot of candidates, and they always come to you and they always say, I'm being urged to run and I'm being recruited. And that's all 99% of the time crap. It means they want to run.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I don't think he necessarily wanted to run.
You believe
I actually believe him. Okay. I think he ran to be the Attorney General. I think he's doing a great job. But I also think the party, and I think a lot of people within the party, our number one goal is to beat Claire McCaskill. And then they look at the playing field of who has the potential to beat him, and he sits on the top. And I disagree with my good friend Jamilah Nasheed. The reason Claire's going to get beat is because of her experience and because of her record. And so, actually, I think it's been a very difficult decision for him and his family. He's got 2 young kids, and you know, as a father, I understand how difficult that is. So actually, I think he is running with reservation because he wants to be Attorney General.
So Garrett Webb, you're a Democratic consultant. Let's change hats here. You're in the room. The Ladders ad that he ran in the primary, where politicians run for one office to get to another office. I mean, honestly, he is going to have to deal with the issue, like every politician does, but this is sort of hypocrisy on video. How would you advise someone to get around that and get past it?
Well, I think he is genuinely conflicted. I think we've all agreed on that in a number of ways, but I would say to him...
I'm the skeptical person that thinks it might, maybe not, but okay.
I think collectively, though, he's genuinely conflicted in wanting to do this, because I think he's looking at this and he wants to be Attorney General, and I think he's going to be a great Attorney General for the next 3 years, and then we'll defeat him in 2020. But looking at that ad that he ran, telling him that this is what you said, this is what you're going to look at for the next year. Do you really want to do that, or do you want to make a difference in some of the initiatives you've already started as Attorney General? That's it. Stay as Attorney General, because you're not going to be able to defeat Claire McCaskill. We took the experiment of electing the people without experience, and we see what that's brought us.
Senator, I don't know. So take your partisan hat off, and just, if you're Josh Hawley and you have this ad that is obviously you're going to see 1,000,000 times again, how do you get around saying career politicians are bad, people climbing the ladder are bad, when by most fair standards you're climbing a ladder?
There's no way you can get around it. People are sick and tired of career politicians, and him climbing the ladder and people seeing that ad each and every day is going to be very tough for him.
I'm not a big basher of people that have spent their life in public service like Jim Talent, but Claire McCaskill would be a career politician, right? She's made her career in public office.
She's an experienced politician. Yeah, she's
an
experienced politician. There's a big difference there.
Tom Hannegan, one time I heard Wendell Bailey give a speech. He said, when I started off as a young man, I said, give a young man a chance. Now that I'm an old man, I say experience counts. Is that the difference between career politician and experienced politician?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I came in as an outsider, and I like that term, outsider. Yeah, but now I can't say that I'm an outsider, and I think some of the people that claim to be outsiders need to say they're in the mix now.
Yeah.
But
when you have a highway patrol security detail, you're no longer an outsider.
Right. But as far as, you know, it's a fun ride. It's an interesting ride. You know, you don't know what you don't know, and by getting in there, you go and you just learn, and sometimes things change along the way.
So you have one of your colleagues, Paul Kurtman, it's in the race.
Mm-hmm.
You have Eric Schmidt considering the race, maybe a few others. Better say Austin Peterson, or Twitter will light up. Do you think that, I think if it's a one-on-one, the primary will be challenging. I mean, obviously, Hawley may be the favorite. He's proven he could raise money. What does a challenging primary do to Josh Hawley's chances?
You know, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, the jury's still out. I mean, there's a lot of good folks running for this, and so we'll just have to see what happens.
Steve Tilley, how does the primary change the dynamic here?
Well, in the past, it's always been very difficult because you brutalize the person of the same party, and they end up with no funds. But Governor Greitens I believe the tough primary made Governor Greitens a better candidate. Okay, he was more prepared to run for governor, and I think it actually helped him in the long run. I wouldn't have said it at the beginning, but it helped him in the long run. So I think I think maybe we're in a different dynamic. I think a primary isn't necessarily a bad thing.
You've served with Eric Schmidt. If he gets in this race, his name ID in St. Louis, his issue profile, is he a tougher candidate to run against?
Oh, it's very difficult for Holly at that point. Once Schmidt gets in the race, because he's not only friends with Republicans, he's friends with Democrats as well. And I think the Democrats will cross over and vote for him if there isn't a primary within the Democratic Party.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, which one's tougher?
I think we're tired of these litmus tests. You know, these situations where you have to be the most conservative or you have to be the most liberal in either party. We really need to get back to which candidate is going to appeal the most. And Josh Hawley's going to learn that, and he's going to have to pivot to the right, but that's not what's going to win the general election up against a candidate like Claire McCaskill.
Speaking of litmus tests, you just came out of a special session on abortion. I don't see the law did all that much. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Well, what the law did was basically stayed on the attack towards the
but the
Planned
provisions
Parenthood
in the bill
movement.
was not all that restrictive.
But at the end of the day, there's a systematic movement that's happening throughout this country to dismantle Planned Parenthood as we know it. Okay, Planned Parenthood, they only provide at least 10% or less when it comes to abortions. All of the other services that they provide is needed for women's health and even men's health, to that matter. So this was basically an all-out attack on Planned Parenthood. Republicans pandering to their base, their extremist base, and that's basically what it was all about.
Representative Hannegan, I mean, coming out of special session, they passed a bill. They were very proud of it. It didn't seem like it was all that restrictive on what it actually did.
I was for it, and the reason why I was for it is I didn't look at it. I looked at it as reasonable request. I think that Planned Parenthood should be like any other clinic where inspections are required. I mean, that's what's required in hospitals. I think some of the things that were added for our protections, things like ambulance not coming, with their sirens blazing or coming to the back door. I mean, if something happens, we need to be able to provide ambulance service and get them to the hospital
down the
where they
St. Louis
need.
ordinance, essentially. Those are the two things it really did.
Well, yes, and I mean, I think it's. Again, I looked at it as more of women's health and women's safety as opposed to, ending abortions altogether anyway.
See, I mean, they passed it, but I didn't think it was like that big of a deal.
Well, no, but I think you do have to look at incremental progress, because I think what we've done as a Republican majority since 2002, we've made incremental progress that have resulted in fewer abortions across the state.
But the biggest deal was partial birth abortion.
Yeah, I agree with that. But from a political standpoint, listen, special sessions are difficult. I've been involved with some that didn't go so well. Okay, and so I do think you got to give, whether you think it did a lot or not, you got to give the governor credit. He called them in. They did what he wanted them to do, and he got a win. So, I mean, he achieved his goal, and in special sessions, that is not easy to do, and so you got to give him credit on that point.
Okay, Rob, I mean, really, when you look at if abortion bill was going to pass, this probably is not that aggressive of one to have passed, right?
I think any attack on women's health is obviously bad. I'm a Democrat. I believe in the rights of the Supreme Court settled that issue a long time ago. But looking at this, the governor railed against special interests. This was a bill specifically for special interests and written by special interests.
But are pro-life people a special interest? I mean, I guess everybody could be a special interest. Beer-drinking Cardinal fans could be a special interest. I mean, the fact are, every time the citizens go to vote, they elect more pro-life members than the last time. I mean, at some point, the state's going to pass pro-life legislation, right?
That's true, but at some point they're also going to face the Supreme Court and say, how far can you go? You've already regulated things as much as possible. If they're truly looking at things like the representative said about not about so much ending abortion, but making sure that it's safe, then let's have that conversation.
Did they not take that into account this time, and that's why the bill's a little less aggressive than others might have liked it to be?
I think they did.
They were trying to meet that federal standard. Do you think they made it? Do you think they met it?
Yes, I mean it's a hard topic for everybody.
Sure.
But I was proud of what came out of the bill.
Do you think they met? Will this stand up in federal court scrutiny?
I believe so, and I think they're going to continue to push the limit until they're say no, that it doesn't. Right?
Is that not what the people of Missouri want?
I believe it is.
Yeah, I do too.
As a matter of fact, I think you would have a full repeal if the citizens of the state had an opportunity to do so.
Well, if they had a full repeal, then they wouldn't be able to get the contributions the next year. So they don't want a full repeal. But the thing about it, though, Tilley and Scott, is this here. How do you say in good conscience that you are for local control?
Do they even say that anymore?
Yes, they do.
I mean, people fall out of their chair laughing.
And then turn around and tread on me.
Oh, absolutely. They backed up, too. I mean, local control is a laughable issue for a Republican to say anymore, right? I mean, would anybody even take that seriously?
I think out and out state, some folks do who aren't maybe paying attention to what's been going on when the legislature's in session. But folks that are paying attention and are tuned in certainly know that the local control is something that Republicans forgot about a long time ago.
When they say local control on caucus, do you guys just laugh at each other? Is that like an inside joke now?
I still believe that there should be local control, but there are consequences for things. So you can't. Nobody has full reign to do whatever they want.
Sure.
So there has to be guidelines and parameters, and I think we need to be sensitive to local control. I think everybody should come to the table and express their concerns, but at the end of the day, people can't just do whatever they want.
Steve Tilley, Republicans like local control until they're the ones that are above that.
You're exactly right. It's a joke. Republicans are hypocritical on two things. Local control is certainly one of them, and regulations are another one, because they're against regulations unless they don't like what you're doing. Then they want to regulate you. So I would prefer them to be more libertarian-esque, that's consistent on those two issues.
Scott, you wonder why I like Tilley.
Well, some issues are state issues like abortion, but there's a bunch of other things where local control is just a kind of an inside joke, right? If you say that without smirking, but with a minute left, who won the week?
I think Reince Priebus did, getting the freedom.
His book could be interesting.
I think it will be. I'll be the first one to buy it.
I don't read books, but okay. Unless Whitey Herzog's book. Who won the week?
Robert Mueller. We are getting closer and closer to getting that misfit out of the White House.
He doesn't need to write a book. He's already leaked most of the stuff that you would put in a book anyway. Who won the week?
I'm going to say Dan Lennon. He's a director of tourism for the state of Missouri, and with the big eclipse coming and coordinating all that, I think that working and executing such a big, massive project for the whole state, kudos to tourism.
Who won the week?
Nicole Wood, Howard Wood's daughter, who was just appointed by Governor Greitens to the Conservation Commission. She's a good friend, fantastic person, will do a great job for the state. Good pick by the governor.
I'm going to throw out fellow Southeast Missouri and Eddie Justice going on that board.
Absolutely.
But I'll say the person that won the week to me is Will Krause, a guy that has committed a big chunk of his life to public service in the military and the state legislature. They could not have picked a better human being to be on the tax commission. I think Will won the week, and deservedly so. We hope you'll win the week by watching us next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.